What is the scariest thing that's ever woken you up during the middle of the night? I was living alone at the time, in a little studio flat in the city center. It was about 3 a.m., and I was woken up by some crashing sounds in the hallway, and then somebody kicking hard at my bedroom door. Fortunately, my door at the time was a pretty hefty fire door with a good strong lock, so I had enough time to call the police before he did any damage to it. I was living pretty close to the police station, so they turned up fast with dogs and caught him still inside the building. As it turned out, the guy was absolutely wasted and looking for somewhere to sleep, and from the outside, my place looked like the empty nightclub it used to be before it was converted into flats. So, my guess is he thought it would be empty, rather than actually attempting to rob/attack anyone living there. I was very shaken up by it at the time. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Maybe he was a regular at the club before it was made into flats. My husband, jumping up in bed next to me, screaming that a cockroach just crawled over his legs. Then he continued shrieking while doing a strange jig on top of the bed, furiously shaking his arms back and forth. After the initial terror, shock, and confusion, however, it was hilarious. I woke up to a cockroach that crawled into my ear. I shit you not. Excruciating pain. Tried to flush it out with water. No luck. I had to lie there for 6 hours before my mom took me to the hospital while it moved around, scratched my eardrum, and fluttered its wings. That sound is terrifying when it comes from in your ear. My ear was bruised from how hard I was pushing in an attempt to stop it moving. They first tried to blast it out with a high-pressured little hose, which hurt like a bitch and didn't work. So then they poured oil into my ear to drown it, then sucked the fucker out with a little vacuum. God, I'm so sorry you had to go through this, but mostly I'm sorry I had to realize this is a real possibility in life. I stepped out of my bedroom to find my entire house lit up, 2 EMTs and a sheriff's deputy in my living room. They proceeded to tell me to come sit down, stay calm, relax, and help them. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Why are you guys in my house? Apparently, I had suffered a grand mal seizure in my sleep. Never having this happen before, my wife called 911. I must have come out of the seizure, got up, walked into the bathroom to take a piss, and had no idea it even happened. While I was in the bathroom, they all arrived, came in, and my wife had turned on all the lights, and I was oblivious to everything. Weirdest feeling ever, would not do again. I woke up with a girl standing next to my bed, staring at me. At the same time, I hear a horrifying scream, not from the girl, but from somewhere far away. It took around 10 seconds for my scared and sleepy brain to realize that my daughter had woken up to look for me, and so had my baby son in his room. Just a few weeks ago, woke up to scratching noises. I'm talking intense. I mean nails scraping down a blackboard intense. I freak out. The lights go on, staring at the wall where the scratching noise is coming from. I go to the next room over to investigate if it's coming from the other side. Nope. Sit awake for 3 more hours, sweating profusely and coming up with conspiracies. Investigate as the sun comes up. Turns out it was a possum that had gotten into my walls because it's too cold outside. Freaking Australia, man. Woke up from a dream about a man who climbs in windows and watches people sleep to see someone sitting on the chair next to the bed I was sleeping in. Then I actually woke up. This happened at my grandparents' house when I was in high school or middle school, and since then, I've had at least one dream like this at their house. I was staying in a different room that is attached to the attic, and someone came through the door in the middle of the night. I'm not sure if I placed emphasis on the creep factor of that room because of the attic and the rumors that the previous owner's mother-in-law lived and died in the attic, or if that house is just fucked up. My grandmother had one of these dreams too, only it was death, telling her to come. She apparently did not go. When I was younger, a woman, whom I did not know, knocked on the frame of my door and shouted, "I'm home," and went downstairs. I woke up my parents, and my mother found her knocked out on our floor. She turned out to be the neighbor's daughter, and she got back home from drinking and thought our house was hers. We woke her up and she left, but she went home barefoot and forgot her shoes. Sounds like a typical night out. I was 10 years old and camping out with my Girl Scout troop out by Catalina Island, and we were sleeping in our sleeping bags outside. I fell asleep with my hand outside of the bag, and I woke up sometime later feeling something crawling around on the back of my hand. There was a full moon out, and I look over and saw a ginormous potato bug on my hand. I wanted to scream, but I didn't want to wake everyone up, so I flung my hand away from myself to get rid of the bug, and then spent the rest of the night with the zipper of my sleeping bag pulled shut and the opening at the top closed up, worst night of my 10-year-old life. For a few days over the weekend, I was visiting family down in Denver. It's not usually a bad area, but around 12 at night, I was sleeping on the couch when I was woken up to an extremely loud banging outside. I stood up and listened. After a few more seconds of banging, I heard the front door to the apartment complex I was in slam open. We were on the ground floor. All I heard after that was a bunch of people yell, "Get down! Get down!" I could hear cops knocking on people's doors for about 15 minutes afterwards. Nothing bad happened to me or my family, but I was chatting with the manager of the apartments the next morning and learned that a man that I had normally talked to once or twice had shot his girlfriend in the head and killed her. It was crazy, and I'll never forget the poignant sense knowing that this seemingly regular guy had snapped so easily. I woke up and saw a spider the size of my hand descending from the ceiling toward my sleeping baby's head. I am horribly afraid of spiders and would have just run if it was coming for me. Instead, I went full mama bear and punched the fucker. Then I realized I was dreaming with my eyes open. I've done this countless times. I couldn't go back to sleep after. It seemed so real. Edit. When I punched the spider, it was 2 or 3 feet above my sleeping treasure. He slept through the whole thing, even after when I was frantically searching the bed for the gigantic, injured demon spider. The sound of my mother sobbing and screaming for help. Granted, it wasn't actually the middle of the night. It was like 7:30 a.m., but I woke up from a dead sleep and had bolted halfway down the hall before I even registered what it was I was hearing. All I knew was that she sounded hysterical and was screaming the word help over and over. Thinking back on it now, I specifically remember hearing, "Emmy, help me please," and just "Emmy, help," and "help me," and just my name alone over and over. Turned out she'd slipped and fallen in the backyard and thought she'd broken her ankle because of how terrible the pain was. It was raining and cold outside, and it was only she and I in the house, and there was no one else there to help her. I sprinted down a flight of stairs and out into the backyard at top speed. In fact, I crashed through the back door so quickly that it slammed onto the outside wall of the house and rebounded hard enough to nearly shut itself again. To this day, that is one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me, period. The sound of my mother crying for help. Well, it was about 8 months ago, about 2:40 a.m. I was sleeping in my bed when I heard a loud bang in my kitchen. Unaware of what it was, I got up and wasn't sure of anything. I get my gun from my safe and walk out. I then hear a huge rattle of pans and plates falling on the floor. I was really freaking out. My blood was pumping so hard, it was so bad, I was starting to get a headache from it. I creep out of my hallway. It's pitch black. I look in the kitchen, poking my head in. 2 strong, glowing eyes staring at me. So fucking scary, man. It rustles my jimmy so hard. I booked it back to my room and popped open the window and hopped the fuck out because I don't got time to deal with that bullshit. I was so fucking scared. I was on my phone about to dial 911 when I remembered that I bought a fucking cat like a month ago, and it ran away and came back that night. Needless to say, I saved a nice pair of undies from being slaughtered by my fatal bowel movement of terror. I knew I shouldn't have bought a freaking cat. My puppy has a habit of going under the blankets in my bed and sleeping by my feet. One time, I didn't realize he had done this, and in the middle of the night, I see this lump crawling towards me. Half asleep me freaks out and then kicks the lump and then breaks down after hearing my puppy yelp. So scary because I thought a bed monster was going to eat me, and because I thought I killed my puppy by kicking it. My bad. I just moved in with my boyfriend, now husband, when I had to leave for a week on a business trip, then leave for another week on a family vacation that was planned before he and I got serious. Basically, just as I got used to sleeping next to someone, I got used to sleeping alone again. First night back, I fell asleep pretty early. By the time he comes in, I'm in a deep sleep. The old bed sinks just a little too much, and I become aware that someone had just crawled in bed with me. But I was too sleepy to remember that I am now living with another human being. I freaked out. I yelled, "Who are you?" at my boyfriend, and essentially broke his heart. He now climbs in bed extra quiet. When I was younger, about 5 to 7 years old, I kept having the same dream for months. It started with me being in a black limousine with about 10 seemingly rich, elderly white men. They were all popping champagne bottles and toasting each other. The chauffeur would drop me off at my house, the men would say bye, and I'd stand in front of my driveway. For some reason, I could hear every footstep coming from the inside of my house, and I could hear 2 sets of feet running around. I would hear my mom's blood-curdling scream, and then the sound of a very terrifying roar would follow her scream. I would always jolt awake right after that. I've never made it past that part. That is some serious dystopian nightmare bullshit. That gave me chills. A magnitude 7.4 earthquake. The sound is unbelievable. It's like a freight train steaming through your bedroom. The chimneys explode down the steel roof. The walls roll like the mast on a ship in a storm. The ceiling cracks and falls in. Things are thrown against one wall, into the air, against the opposite, and back again. Then there's an awful silence, just for a second, before the hissing and bubbling of broken water mains creep in through the air, and you start to notice a screech of burglar alarms in the distance. Then you light a cigarette, and the sirens start. When I was 10, I had a friend. My friend's name was Jesse. Jesse sometimes sleepwalked, but you couldn't really call it sleepwalking because walking just didn't seem to be his thing. Take, for example, one night I'm over at his house. I was sound asleep until about 2:30 a.m. when I was jolted awake by the noise and subsequent sight of Jesse mauling, not beating, but mauling the ever-living shit out of his pillow while screaming at the top of his lungs, "Give me back my piece of pizza!" Jesse was a cool guy. My family was staying at this haunted hotel in Savannah, Georgia. It was an old hospital during the Civil War, or something like that, and my brother and I were sharing a bed. The first night, I woke up to him smashed up against the headboard, no noise and movement at all. When I asked him what he was doing, he said he was afraid to move because he wasn't entirely sure if he was dead or paralyzed, that he woke up to this enormous pressure and was pushed up against the headboard. That freaked me out, and I refused to share bed with him again out of fear of another ghost attack. The next night, I was sleeping with my sister, and she rolled over on me. I kept trying to push her off when I noticed she wasn't anywhere near my side of the bed. I almost peed my pants, and then I watched TV until the sun came up because fuck ghosts.